Okay, this is just a mini presentation on UHF and VHF. And what I was going to talk about is FM operation, simplex operation, repeater operation, nets. What are PL tones? What's an input frequency? What's an output frequency? What are PL tones? Where do they come from? The three major VHF, UHF bands are 2 meters, the 220 band, and the 440 band, which equates to 2 meters, 1.25 meters, and 70 centimeters. And last, I'll talk a little about etiquette. Simplex mode is just that. It's simplex. It goes from me to you, you to me. It's not a cell phone, because a cell phone, if you're talking, I can talk over you. You can't do that in simplex mode. I push the PTT button to transmit, and you listen. When it's your turn, you do the same and reciprocate. Depending on your output power and your antenna height, simplex communications is usually 5 to 25 miles. Now, even though 6 meters is part of the VHF band, I'm really not going to get into that, other than the fact that 6 meters acts like HF. When the bands are in perfect condition, you can talk to the world on 6 meters, believe it or not. But it has to be ideal situations. We're also not going to talk about the microwave bands, because those require a certain expertise. Some of the common frequencies for simplex, for example, 146.52 is the calling frequency. You would want to call someone on 146.52, and that's what most people monitor, and then you move off of that frequency and go to one of the other ones listed. The 220 band and the 440 band is similar. Again, in red are the frequencies that we would call people on. Repeater operation is just as it states, it repeats. So I transmit to get over a mountain, for example, my friend KD1KU in South Hadley, and I live in East Hampton. I can't talk to him direct because the mountain's in the way, Mount Tom. We're lucky that there's a repeater on top of Mount Tom. So I transmit on 146.94, and he receives my signal on 146.34. And it goes back and forth via the mountain. The mountain has a repeater on it. So again, the simplex is going in one direction, one at a time, and then back and forth. The repeater has split frequencies where you transmit on one frequency, receive on the other frequency. What a lot of people do is when they call via the repeater, they like to listen in on the input frequency. If you can hear the other individual, you may just go simplex and not tie up the repeater. Many times what happens when you do that, to go simplex, you increase your power to go a further distance. Most repeaters use the FM mode, but depending on the repeater, they may also have DMR, D-Star, Slow Scan TV, Echo Link, but it all depends on the repeater itself. And that is judged by the owner. So what are offsets and why? Well, without having an offset between the transmit signal and the receive signal, the repeater will only hear itself because it's on the same frequency. So thus, the split offset. And for 2 meters, the offset is plus or minus 600 kilohertz. For the 220 band, 1.25 meters, it's 1.6 megahertz plus. The 440 band, or the 70 centimeters, is plus or minus 5 megahertz. Now, who came up with those numbers? I have no idea. But they work. They split. And what are PL tones? PL tones it's a private line, and Motorola came up with a proprietary name for the CTCSS, which stands for Continuous Tone Coded Squelch System. And this is to prevent repeaters from responding to unwanted signals or interference. At the time, well, not at the time, but even currently, there are so many repeaters throughout the United States and just in cities and towns alone that there's not enough frequencies. So Motorola came up with, I think, 16 different PL tones. We use 146.94, for example, up here on Mount Tom. But in another town, they could also use 146.94, but they have to have a different PL tone than we do. Thus, we can have more repeaters throughout the United States. And that's what the PL is all about. Here's an actual table. I think 25 different PL tones. Below that, halfway down the screen, just happens to be my little list for local repeaters that I made up. I have the frequency, what's the offset, what's the PL tone, and where's it located. You need to know that, and I keep a little piece of paper in my car too, because I can't remember what all these PL tones are, or what frequency has what PL tone. So where do I find all this information on PL tones and offsets and frequencies, and where am I? Well, by the way, this presentation will be uploaded to the hcra.org website. And to find the information on repeaters, you go to repeaterbook.com. It comes up with a map of the United States. You click on Massachusetts, and then from there you can go deeper and deeper into cities and towns. And I happen to print out the one for Holyoke area, and there's 5 there that are. Let me get rid of this clock down here. The green dots meaning open, that they are open to the public as long as you know what the PL tones are. The other ones are not open, even though it says open, but they're not. It's not green. They're probably privately owned, or you need a certain sequence to get onto those repeaters. But that's where you go to look and find out more information on the repeaters themselves. This is all about nets. What are nets? They're a group of people that get together on a nightly basis, and they talk about emergency traffic to go from one town to another town or state to state. They also have information nets where you can get on there and ask questions. Some other nets even are involved with the weather, for example, Skywarn. And these are just some of the few that are available in this area. And again, this will be uploaded. So what's UHF and UHF good for? Especially now because of the solar minimum. Well, you've got simplex and repeater operations. You've got something on 2-meter upper sideband, for example, which is weak signal chasing. You need bigger antennas, more power, but it's something to do in UHF VHF. The 6-meter band, when it's open, acts like HF. You have FM mode. You have the different modes that require internet. In other words, D-Star, DMR, and Fusion, and that's at the repeater level. Repeaters can have a D-Star link, but that D-Star requires an internet connection. A lot of repeaters don't have these extras because they can't afford the price of internet at that location, be it at the top of a mountain. There's the International Space Station, which I'll get to in a minute. You can actually communicate with these. Satellite communications, I have a friend in East Hampton that is in the beginning steps of communicating with satellites. They use split frequencies, 2 meters, 440, but with the appropriate radio, you can actually, from your yard or your front yard, you can actually communicate very quickly over a satellite. There's contesting. There's something called Echolink, which is also requires the internet. Some question whether it is in fact ham radio, but it's just another one of those avenues within ham radio that people enjoy, and you do still need a license. IRLP is very similar. Then there's just the soda podas and iotas, and that's Summit's on the air, Park's on the air, Island's on the air. You even have YOTA, which is Youth's on the air. That's big nowadays. And it's not just on HF. They communicate on VHF and UHF as well. There's the whole microwave operation that has its uniqueness of its own. You've got MCOM, which is all communications, emergency communications, preparedness, public services. A a lot of people volunteer to help out local races and parades. There's Earth, Moon, Earth, which is actually bouncing your signal off of the moon and having it come back to your radio. Very similar to satellite communication, except I'm bouncing off the moon. Again, it requires a little more equipment, better antennas, more power. There's also meteor scatter communications. When the bands are in good condition and you're allowed to, not allowed, but you have the opportunity to bounce off the ionosphere, your little signal from your front yard will actually travel quite a distance. This is my actual contact with the International Space Station. I actually had a two-way communication with them, as well as some slow scan TV. It's very easy to do. All you need is a handheld 2-meter radio and a cell phone, which mostly everybody has. You have a question?
I have two. In 6 meters, do you call CQ?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
So you treat it like an HF band.
It's like HF.
And then in satellite, so that's QSL card, right? Or
this is all ISS, but
ISS, okay.
For satellites, it's the same thing. You'll call CQ and give your call, but it has to happen very quickly because all this stuff is orbiting around the Earth. So you have to be quick. So that's a lot of fun. Not only that, if you can actually submit your QSL cards or your the information that you receive the ISS, submit it, and you get a nice certificate. Just another little thing to do on 2 meters. Here are some references that I've listed. If you want to know more about repeaters, if you want to know more about D-Star, DMR, ARES, which is the Amateur Radio International Space Station. Some differences if you don't know what to choose, D-Star, DMR, or Fusion. There's a great website for that. There's also websites for Echolink, IRLP, AMSAT. So it's up to you as an individual and a beginner. You have to start somewhere. UHF, VHF, when you first get your license, is a great place to start. But then you've got some other decisions to make as to what do you want to do? Do you want to talk to satellites? Do you want to get into emergency communications? It's all here. It's wide open. So there's a lot to do on UHF and VHF. What's left? The stuff that we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about transceivers. What's a handheld? What's a mobile unit? What's a base unit? What are the different types of antennas? You've got 3-element antennas. You've got 5-element. You've got 30-element antennas. You've got verticals. You've got horizontals. The field is wide open, and there is so much to learn. You can learn more about 6 meters, microwave communications, all the stuff that I talked about previously. There's just so much to learn. It's a lot of people will come up and say, "Well, I don't do UHF, VHF. I don't want to talk on repeaters or talk simplex. It's just too boring for me." Well, as you can see, there's plenty to it. And that's all I have. And what I monitor in my car is 146.52, so people can call me and I'll move on to other frequencies.
Thank you. Nice job.